Well, the government may be shut down, but we are up and running absolutely in the new year. Today on Secure Digital Life, Russ and I welcome Lennie Simon, a mentor from Springboard and a senior security engineer. We're going to talk about things you need to do to get into cybersecurity as a career. And Lennie's like the expert. I mean, he's like the master specialist mentor. He does like everything on earth. So stick around and we'll talk about it on Secure Digital Life.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. If your users are going to keep putting risky stuff on your machine, you're screwed. So Top can help us understand the complexity of blockchain.
I was reading through the show notes, man. Oof.
In binary, it would be 001. Who cares? But it's probably not significant anyway. Be like you're looking out through the HAL dot, like,
oh,
hey, Dave.
It's like Sims, but with,
It would be like
I
Sims.
instead of AI, it's
only. Accredited by Microsoft, Cisco, NetApp, IDLE, Oracle, and EC Council, QuickStart delivers high-impact, low-cost IT training through its cognitive learning platform in multiple domains. With QuickStart, you get an ever-growing catalog of courses, self-paced courses offered through a monthly subscription, virtual classrooms offered through an annual subscription, peer-to-peer learning, mentoring, official courses, certified instructors, hands-on labs, and more. For more information, visit www.quickstart.com. Use coupon code PAUL20 to get 20% off on all cybersecurity courses. Quick Start, creating world-class technologists. It's that time again in the year when you have to start thinking about all your conferences. So RSA Conference 2019 is the place to be for the latest in cybersecurity data, innovation, and thought leadership. From March 4th through the 8th in San Francisco. San Francisco will come alive with cybersecurity's brightest minds as they gather together to discuss the industry's newest developments. Go to rsaconference.com/securityweekly-US19 to register now using the discount code 5U9SWFD to receive $100 off the full conference pass, so you should check that out. If you are interested in quality over quantity and have meaningful conversations instead of just a badge scan, join us April 1st through the 3rd at Disney's Contemporary Resort for InfoSec World 2019, where you and others can connect and network with like-minded individuals in search of actionable information. Use the registration code OS19-SEC Week for 15% off the main conference or the World Pass. All that stuff's in the show notes, so if you want to check it out there and you didn't know what I said, feel free to do so. Also, just as a side note, sad side note, I don't know what that is. Dave Kennedy this morning announced that this year will be the last DerbyCon. So if you are planning to go to DerbyCon for the last DerbyCon ever, you should check that out. And I know we didn't have a note and they didn't pay us to say that, but he did announce that this morning. This will be the last DerbyCon ever in September. So, and getting DerbyCon tickets is always a challenge. So if you want to go to Louisville and go to the last DerbyCon, you should check that out. Today, we're going to welcome Lennie Simon. Lennie is a teacher at 7 universities. I had that written down, which, wow, that's a lot of universities. And he's working a PhD in cybersecurity, and he's a mentor. So welcome, Lennie. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Very happy to be here.
Cool. And hi, Russ. Russ is joining us from a very unusual location, which is some sort of voyeuristic tank where people get to watch Russ's back while he talks through those glowing windows back there. Or are they maybe like...
There's actually nobody in the room. It's just me. But I needed to be here to do some server work this morning.
But aren't there like a lot of people outside those windows looking in?
I hope not.
It's like the Today Show, and there's like people out there doing unusual things.
Putting quarters in.
Exactly. Oh, they have to drop quarters to watch Russ sit at a bar. He gets paid to do that, so you should seek that out. So my first question for Lennie then, and I'm sorry, Lennie, if I say Lemmy, it's because of Lemmy, but I almost said Lemmy, and I was like, I'm going to say Lemmy here. I'm going to get in trouble. I know your name is Lennie. Could you just tell? I had a question. So could you tell everybody a little bit about what a mentor actually is? I mean, I had that on there. I mean, I think we all know the word, but I mean, like, what does a mentor do?
Sure. It's a good question. It can be kind of based on the context, but right now at Springboard, mentors are put in place to help the students, the learners that are going through the courses, making sure they're on the right path, making sure to answer any questions they have about the course itself, just kind of guiding them along just to make sure that, they're taken care of and they have some direction, and a lot of questions come up during the course, and we want to make sure that we're there for them to answer them. And, some of this material or most of it could be new to them. So along the way, along the course, they may have questions about certain acronyms, certain terms. So we're there to help them out. And we also help them out with some, advice about certifications, career paths, the industry itself, just kind of get them going and get their minds thinking. So
is that a modern thing? I mean, that, when I went to school, it was just kind of like learn or die.
Right.
And you had to just sort of wing it. And, there was a professor, but if you actually tried to contact them, you usually, they would pepper spray you or something. And
yeah, with this new, online learning type of format, not too many, I guess places do this where they have a mentor. Usually, they'll have like a live online or on demand type of learning course, which are great as well. But Springboard specifically has a mentor attached to, the services they provide. And honestly, to agree with you, I don't think that, that has been around, for very long. I mean, at least for this industry, it seems like it's very recent. And I think it's a great idea because, the courses, especially the intro course, is geared toward, people getting into the field. And there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of confusion about the different roles you can go for, the certifications you can get. And yeah, you're learning the intro to cybersecurity type of format, and it kind of gears them for the Security Plus certification. But with that, there's a lot of questions that come up. And I think it's a great idea that Springboard did that because, there's several universities I teach at. Most of them are a few of them are intro courses as well. And also, some of them are senior level courses too. And they have questions about the industry, what's going to happen when they're done. What position's best for them, what positions, the most high paying position, what certifications they need. So, to your point, yeah, there are professors and there are maybe TAs that can help out with these questions. But with a course like Springboard, I feel that, it's a little more personal and a little more like direct in a way. So because you're assigned to them and, we have other mentees that I mentor. But and each has their own kind of story and their background and their vision. But I feel that it's just more personalized going the mentor route that way.
I really like that idea. I mean, I think more universities should do that. I mean, at where I work, they have advisors, and I think often the idea of advisors is sort of gets muddied into this idea of what you call a mentor, because when we were working with that, advisors, they act like that's what they're going to do, but then, advisors have so many roles and they're responsible for a curriculum and for, managing all these other processes. And then you end up with 50, 60 advisees. You don't really have time to do, what the mentor sounds like they're doing. I think that's a really good idea. Russ, do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, when I worked for another school myself, we had these things called professional mentors, and we would pair, as Leonard was talking about, it's an individualized, more individualized experience. We would pair up students based on their interests, based on their passions, based on what they wanted to accomplish, and eventually what kind of job that they wanted to tell. We'd pair them up with industry professional people who had been working in the field for a long period of time. And a lot of the feedback that we got from the students in the program was like, "Oh, I'm so glad I had this mentor. It was the best part of the education experience, because it's not something that they've been accustomed to." And for people who are just starting out in the field, they can be overwhelming or daunting. So the the students really appreciated these mentors. So I love what Lennie's talking about and what they're doing. That's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. And
I think
go ahead, Lenny.
I was going to say when you hit it right on the nail on the head there. I think the biggest value to this whole thing is, the mentors like myself are subject matter experts. I'm in the field, in the industry as a practitioner, and I'm in academia. So when they talk to me, I have been retired for 5, 10, 20 years. I'm in the field. I'm working at a customer, right now, several customers right now. So I have that, real world current advice, whether it's certifications, whether it's the titles of positions, whether what companies are kind of looking for. So then that's gold to them. The students love that. Both my university students and my mentees at Springboard.
Yeah, I like the idea. I mean, I think it's a really good concept, and I think having it being subject matter expert type people is a good idea too. Plus, they can tie you back to the industry. With that in mind, probably the biggest question I get asked a lot is school versus work. So, people that are wanting to get in, I mean, everybody wants to get into cyber. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they want to get into cyber. And they're in a different field or whatever, and they were like, should I go to school? And a lot of high school students saying, couldn't I just get a job and make money because they're so desperate, and on and on and on. So, school costs money, it takes time, it takes effort, you have to deal with me. What do you think?
Yeah. One thing about school is if you look at most job postings right now, most, if not all, require, at least a bachelor's. There may be a few that don't, but bachelor's degree is pretty important. I guess it's kind of a standard in most of these job positions that I've seen. So in that sense, school can be important. Doesn't mean that you aren't able to get a job if you don't have a degree or a bachelor's. There are other alternatives. There's associates, and there are certifications because a lot of companies, and experience too. If you don't have any of that, obviously, maybe a little more difficult at first. But school is definitely something that I get questioned about a lot. Most of the students I talk to are in school, right? It's because they're at the university. But some of the mentors I deal with don't have a degree, and they're kind of riding that wave and taking the courses and learning the material, learning the topics and the concepts. Knowing that they don't get an actual college degree out of this course, but they do get the experience based and exposure based on the topics and a certification. It's a prep course basically. And I do tell them, maybe a little difficult to find a job that doesn't require at least a bachelor's nowadays. I mean, I don't know what you guys think and you guys see out there. I mean, do you kind of see the same thing as far as at least that requirement?
I certainly do, and there was this sort of window there when there was people coming out of high schools that were getting hired into jobs. I had somebody yesterday ask me about getting into forensics, and I was like, well, if you don't have enough background, and there was a time when they were desperate. So I completely agree with you. And one thing I was going to point out about that too, that I tell high school students when they ask that very same question or their parents ask the question is, here's the problem. Bachelor's degrees take a lot of time to get. They take 120 credit hours. So essentially that's roughly 40 classes. And doing that when you're 18 years old and you're going to school full time is a 4-year process. Now imagine trying to do that when you're 27 and you are taking 2 classes per semester, and that means every night of the week you're taking class after work and trying to fit that in around your life. It's going to take you a long off the camera amount of time to do that. And I mean, it's not because I work at the university I'm trying to pitch it to you. It's just because most jobs are going to require it. Advancement in almost every job is going to require it. So the minute you want to get promoted or you want to move out of an entry-level job, they're going to say, you don't have a bachelor's degree, and then you're going to be done. And, of course, getting a master's degree, of course, requires that you have a bachelor's degree. Russ, you're our education expert.
No, I mean, that's some of the same types of advice we would give to the students that in the program in which I work, where we did precisely this type of stuff. So, it's really a combination of both on-the-job experience, on-the-job training, and also education. When I started doing podcasts with you, Doug, I remember going to one of Paul's Security Weeklies, and I think it was John who said, the degree that will get you in the door and the sort of certifications will get you the money that you kind of want. And that's sort of something I've been preaching, because I think that we've all seen that, reflected in modern industry, especially in this field. So just to walk in the door, an associate's, a bachelor's is usually required. I think it's a combination of both.
And now that cyber has been starting to become institutionalized, and I mean, it wasn't, but it is. It's starting to become a part of our culture and a part of the workplace. And even just 5 years ago, I wouldn't have said that, because it was still this sort of, who knows what this thing is. But as it has become institutionalized, that means the jobs you're applying for, you're going through headhunters. I had a headhunter contact me yesterday wanting, people for these security jobs. Well, when you go through those kind of things, or HR or whatever, they have check boxes. And if you can't check that bachelor's box, they're not even going to forward your resume. So you can be the most awesomest person ever, the greatest programmer, the greatest hacker, whatever. If you can't quantify that in some kind of mechanism, you're not going to get past the first round. You're going to get bounced right there at the front door. And that creates a problem. But even all that said, downstream 2-3 years, you're going to want to get promoted to supervisor or another role, and you're going to be done. You won't be able to do it. And then you're back to this part-timer thing. Lennie?
Yeah, I had that same scenario. Like when I graduated college, high school, with a scholarship to SCAD for computer animation. And I went to Savannah. It was a beautiful school, went with my family, but I actually didn't take the scholarship because I just wasn't ready. I just felt. So I went for my associates and kind of went from there. But I didn't get my bachelor's until 5 years later, after working in the field already for the first 5 years after graduating high school. And that was exactly what happened. Like I saw people getting promoted around me. I'm like, well, why am I not getting promoted? And it was bachelor's. I needed that to kind of kick things off. And it's just kind of, what it is in this society right now. But what I do tell my students about bachelor's, at least, or even associates, is nowadays, as you mentioned, cybersecurity is becoming more institutionalized. There are a lot of other options available now, online, cheaper tuition costs, all different types of alternatives. Obviously the financial aid's there, but I don't know. It depends on what the, I guess, concern or issue is. Not getting a bachelor's, maybe it's money, maybe it's timing, maybe it's whatever it is. But now I'm starting to see more options available, and then being more tailored to students or individuals that are on a budget, and or professionals, young professionals on a time budget, as well. So there's a lot of options now for a lot of these folks coming out of high school, or even people in their mid-20s that have much more options than they did when I was 20.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, there's a lot of paths to cyber as well. I mean, from different areas, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit, about the paths. All of us, all three of us sitting here, and everybody I know, not many overlaps in how we all got to where we're sitting right here today. I was a computer science person, so that was where I came into this realm. Russ, I don't know what you guys.
I was
share?
Chemistry, and then after I moved out of chemistry, I went into digital media. Lennie, I think you were talking about design, and that's kind of the path that I pursued. And then I got into technology, and so now here I am, and that in education. So, kind of a skewed path, but here I am, as Doug said.
And Lennie did it another path altogether, right?
Yeah, I think back then, like digital marketing, animation, that was like the big thing back then. That was like the hot area, the hot industry to be in. So I think I remember email marketing was big, computer animation was big, and that was just kind of the thing to do, out of high school if you're into that, and you're into computers. Because cybersecurity, what was that? Back then, no one really cared for it. Back then, it wasn't really so big as it is now. I think that there's a lot of options out there, a lot of paths to get there.
I think so too. I mean, there's a lot of different majors and all kinds of different ways you can get there. You can certainly bundle certifications with majors. I tell computer science students, hey, bundle some security certs into your major, and you're good to go. Networking, same way. Community colleges offer associate's degrees in networking, computer science, computer engineering, all those kind of techie things. And then, you can bundle that along, and a lot of schools are starting to bundle certifications into degrees and put all these pieces together so that you can get there. But, that's something you have to choose. So I think all of us agree that you, dear listener, should probably get a bachelor's degree if you at all can. But the second question in that realm was, what about a master's degree? So this is another area where a lot of people ask me this question. I got asked this question this week by someone who said, should I get a master's degree? And to me, and so I'll give you my position on it. One, a master's degree is supposed to be, traditionally anyway, a master's degree was another undergraduate degree without the reading, writing, and arithmetic part. So they strip out the, you don't have to take history again. But it really was just an undergraduate major that was without all the bells and whistles that you would get in an undergraduate program. So that was the idea of a master's degree, was that you're a history major and you want to become a nuclear engineer, you go get a master's degree in nuclear engineering, or vice versa. The more traditional one, of course, was I'm an engineer, I'm a computer scientist, I want to be a manager now, so I'm going to go get an MBA or a management or a leadership master's degree. So what do you guys think about master's degrees?
Well, I mean, if I can jump in, that was something that I was dealing with after I graduated with my undergrad in 1999. So almost 20 years ago. I didn't know what I wanted to do even at that time. And I knew that, my bachelor's, what I got my bachelor's in wasn't going to be what I was going to do I was working on a help desk, intro sort of, first time working on a help desk, entry level job. And, I was like, well, if I'm going to if I do eventually want to teach, I knew I wanted to maybe teach something. You can't necessarily teach with a bachelor's degree, although you can in K-12 under certain conditions. But I wanted to teach, college. So the next step was I had a mentor, and my mentor had said to me, oh, you're going to need a master's degree. And to sell it to me, which was not much of a sell. It was, it's only going to school 2 days a week for about 18 months, 2 years, because it was only, Doug, as you said, it's like a bachelor's degree without the reading, writing, arithmetic kind of stuff, unless you're getting your master's in one of those. And so it was only, after 2 years, it went by in a flash. It's not like a bachelor's degree. You go to school 2 days a week or something like that, or whatever the new models are. And that's it. You've kind of, got your master's after you do your thesis. And, it wasn't as daunting of a decision to make as going into a bachelor's program is, which is a much more difficult time commitment.
Yeah.
Lennie, what do you?
Yeah, I definitely agree. The master's program, like you said, it's similar to a bachelor's. There's a couple of things stripped out, but when someone asks me, should I get my master's in cybersecurity, I ask them a few questions. How much experience do you have now? Do you have a job in security yet? How many certifications do you have? As far as time and commitment and budget, that's also something to factor in. But the reason why I ask those questions is when students usually come to me with that question, they're, in their early 20s, and they may not have a job in cybersecurity yet. So the question is, Lane, do I spend, 12 to 18 months on a master's program right now while working wherever they're working, and not really focus on any cybersecurity certifications to really jump into the industry really quick? Or do you get maybe one or two cybersecurity certs, like Security Plus, for example, and then try to get into the industry there and then go for your master's? So it really depends on a few of those answers that I get back, because I don't want, what I recommend the students do is, think about, where they are and where they want to be short and long term. Like if you can hold off the master's for, a couple of years, even, that may be something to do while you just get your feet wet in the industry. Because some students may not have the time or the budget really to commit to that. And the same thing applies to the master's as it applies to the bachelor's as far as options, right? The school that I teach at now has, you go every day, every Saturday, all day for a year, you get your master's in something like MIS or cybersecurity. So that's a pretty good program, but it doesn't work for everyone. And they have other classes like Tuesday, Thursday night online. So there's online, there's in person, there's 1 day a week, all day. There's all these different options for people trying to get their master's programs. But um, I do feel that the master's program can provide some value and be a benefit to people that are wanting to go into management later on. I kind of always been around management in a way, so I felt that not only was that a good, that wasn't the only reason why I did it. The other reason why I did it was because I wanted to get more on the business side of the industry, I guess. Because the bachelor's, to me, at least where I went, was more of the technical, more of the grunt work. But the master's was more the business, more the enterprise type of work. And having both those kind of mindsets and also being able to have and to speak to those two sides. Because when you're in a boardroom, you have engineers on one side, you have executives on the other side, and you're the guy that can speak both languages. That's invaluable to businesses. They love that.
I agree with that, but I also want to tell people, be careful. Don't overeducate yourself, as says the educator with lots of degrees. But I mean, listen, when you're 22, you can easily overeducate yourself and make yourself have challenges that you didn't even expect, because people say, oh, well, why do you have all these degrees? You don't have any work experience. And there's nothing, a master's degree is a good investment. I won't lie to you. But be careful that you get work experience at the same time, because you've got to be able to walk the walk. I mean, you have to be able to say, I can do this job. And you're not going to get hired as a manager with no work experience. So you're not going to be able to say, oh, I just went straight through and I got this other degree. I mean, there are fields where that's not true. And then we're just talking about cybersecurity here. I'm not talking about psych and things like that where you have to have a master's degree to do it. Or even forensics, really, you have to have a master's degree to do it. And then I might say something different. But in cybersecurity, I'm saying get some work experience. Let a company pay for your master's degree. I like that. I like what Lennie was saying about getting some certifications. I think that with your bachelor's degree is going to be more valuable than immediately trying to get a master's degree. Like I say, give it a couple of years and then get that master's degree. But I don't think you need to do that right out of the gate. Not right now, the way the industry is. Everybody's wanting to hire you. So get in and get involved, and I think that's a better one. But certs are very valuable. I have some real reservations about certs because, and of course, again, says the guy with a lot of certs, but certs are supposed to prove something, not provide something. So you can, again, sort of over-certify yourself. And I've seen these people, and they have no work experience, and they've got all these degrees and certifications. And I interview them, and they don't really have the basic skills that you get from working in this field. And that worries me a lot. All of us did this stuff before we had certifications and things. We did it at work. And so I worry a little bit about people that have got a whole pile of certs, and I don't see any practical experience to go along with them. They're just like going out and taking a 1-week class, or going out and taking a 1-week class, and they're good at passing tests. And I've known some people who could pass any test. I knew a guy, I bet he could have passed any test anywhere with a few hours of study and know nothing about it. He was completely clueless when it came time to actually do anything with it. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? That's my revelation.
Yeah, I agree. And there's some people that look great on paper, and they're amazing test takers. But when you ask them specific questions about the industry or experience, they get lost. And I've been in interviews where I was interviewing people for other positions where that was the case. It happens. But I agree. Be careful with the certifications of people that you may be hiring for certain positions. And
I'm scared of marketing. Because one of the things we've seen as the industry starts to mature is now marketing's heavily involved. And that means selling. And that means that there's companies and schools out there trying to sell you stuff. And they're going to tell you that if you just come and spend this $8,000, you're going to leap forward in your life. And I be careful about that. Evaluate carefully.
And also one of the things we used to tell as mentors to our students is talk to your employer. And I think all three of us agree that it's important for us, if you're pursuing a graduate degree like a master's degree, to do it simultaneously with working in the field. But talk to your employer and see what types of options they have for reimbursement, because they may pay for your degree, and it's sort of like you could just choose whatever you want, and kind of pass the classes and do well in them and send them the bill kind of thing. But, there's no need for you to pay for something that your employer will pay. I mean, they're investing in you, and you dedicate X number of years to them and you walk away with a degree. That's pretty cool.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I tell my students to look at their employee handbook and see if they have a tuition reimbursement section or continued education section, and send a quick email over to HR, send an email to your manager, ask them the same question. But yeah, because I've taken advantage of that before, and it's reduced a lot of stress, financial stress.
Hey, I tell you, it's great I love going to those boot camp classes, but you got to get somebody to pay for it because I don't make enough money to pay for those things. So, I mean, I've gone to them and I love getting to go, but it's certainly expensive. So let me ask you this question then. One of the things I get asked all the time is, and it's true, you go out and you look at the job market and you jump on there and you say, well, here's all these jobs, and every single one of them says entry level with 3 to 5 years of experience. I mean, I literally went and looked at some of those yesterday because I was talking to a student and he was talking about this, and I went and pulled up a bunch of jobs, and they said stuff like entry level, 3 to 5 years experience. And I'm like, oh, come on. How do you get experience, Lennie? I mean, I get that question constantly from students. Like, I want a good job, but how do I get 3 to 5 years of experience? And what are some ways you get into the job market?
Yeah, that's a good question. I get that question a lot. Couple of things just in general is, network with people, sign up to, local chapters, cybersecurity organizations, go to meetings, talk to people. They may need some help. They may need some extra hands, set of eyes, whatever it is to get, experience, paid or volunteer work, whatever. Local universities and colleges may have labs that they may need help with. There's a cybersecurity lab at my local university that pulls in interns all the time. Internships are great. Look for those. And then, I do agree with you about the entry level and the kind of the misconception with that, because some of these companies that post these jobs don't understand that kind of doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny and scary at the same time because, there's also an issue of, job shortages in cybersecurity, and you look at postings like that, it's like, but there's many ways. Internships are great. There are entry level positions out there, a good amount out there. I tell my students to go to Indeed.com, type in their city, type in the cybersecurity engineer, and stuff like that. And also too, a lot of students get confused on the different roles and different titles, like the difference between an architect, an engineer, a specialist, administrator, analyst. Those are all different types of roles you can be in security, just to name a few. And a lot of them get confused on which one they should look for, which one would be better for entry level, which one's more mid or maybe a higher tier type of position. But internships, volunteering, networking, those are just a couple quick ways I can think of, getting experience.
In addition to the networking part that Lennie you're talking about, one of the things that we used to tell our students too is join any kind of local groups that hold similar interests to what you're interested in. Like, what is it, meetup.com or the meetup groups, the Facebook groups, and just join them and show up at a meeting. They're usually free. And you just get to meet like-minded people, and that's sort of a networking without the whole stigma of networking associated with it.
Isn't that what Tinder.com is?
Oh, not really.
Well, I want to squeeze one more question in here because we're going to run out of time, and we're going to have to have Lennie back to talk about this some more because there's so much stuff we could talk about here. Listen, my last little bit here is, how do you move from being a student or a non-participant to being a professional? So this is a slightly different question. There's a lot of different things that you may want to do as you become a professional in a field. So any tips on that, Lennie?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a good question. The one thing I like to tell my students the first day and last day of classes, and this kind of applies to this, a way that so they can transition from being a student to a professional, is I say, if you learn anything from my courses, just remember this one thing, because someone gave me this piece of advice and it's worked wonders, is always keep yourself marketable. And that can mean many different things to many different people. But, obviously to your point, don't overeducate yourself, but always kind of keep moving forward in the industry. Things change. There's a lot of new directions. There's all these different specializations within cybersecurity you can go in. When you're first starting off, you're learning a little bit of everything. Like Security Plus is a very general certification. You're learning many different topics within the area. And a lot of students, want to grab onto one specialization right away and just kind of, follow that path to make it easy for them. And some don't have that luxury yet. They may not know what they want to do in security, which is perfectly fine. I kind of see it as an advantage because you're still learning as much as you can. And then eventually you'll start narrowing things down and finding maybe one or two specializations you want to stick with. But as far as transitioning from being a student to a professional, let's say just to fast forward, you find an internship, you find that entry level position that actually is entry level, and you start working in that field, continue learning, keep yourself marketable, get some certifications along the way, maybe consider going for a master's degree down the road, but not right away because it won't be valuable to you or your organization if you're getting your master's when you have less than a year experience, like we already discussed. So focus on a couple, maybe low-hanging fruit certifications that are related to security, and network. I mean, networking is a huge, huge aspect of it. Like we said, there's local chapters in Isaka that are around me that I go to every now and then, and there's some great people there, some great advice. I think networking is one of the biggest things you can do because a lot of people don't see that as a big piece because you don't get that instant gratification, right? You go to a networking event and you see someone, you meet them, and that's it. You don't really talk to them maybe ever, or maybe you talk to them 6 months down the road, but it only takes one person to call you back and say, hey, I remember I met you 6 months ago. I have a job that in cybersecurity you may be interested in. So you just never know. It doesn't take much, just a couple words, and then be nice and network and follow up every now and then. And also another thing about events is when I go to some bigger events, I try to make a goal myself, depending how big it is and depending how many days I'm there, is I don't leave that day, that venue or that, conference each day until I get like 5 business cards each day. Just so I have some resources to contact. And, some may be good, some maybe I never talk to again, but you never know. But yeah, transitioning into, a student to professional role is going to take some time. It's definitely a transition. You're not going to know everything about security. And even now, being as long as I've been in the industry, I don't know everything. Things change. But keep yourself marketable, keep learning, keep your head down, ask questions. I guess that's what I have.
I completely agree. I think networking is a really critical thing. It's hard for me because I don't like people very much. But, the idea that you have connections and that you know people that you can, A, contact and ask questions of, B, when you do need a job or you need a transition, you can get advice or you can make it, you can put it out there and say, look, I got fired. I shouldn't have said it. I didn't. And 3, don't be a jerk. Which again is very hard for me. You go to these cons and things and you make enemies and you act like a jerk and you do horrible things. People do remember that. And it is still a small world. And people will remember, and they will remember you were that person who was drunk and threw up all over, the bar and got in a fight with the CEO of IBM asking for a friend, kind of thing. So try to get out there and make sure that you have connections because those will end up being invaluable. Any last thoughts, Russ?
Yeah, just 2 things. In that transition between student to professional, also, I know it seems pretty self-explanatory, but try to find yourself a mentor, a professional mentor, so that, because those people can make the transitions a lot more seamless and sort of cut down on some of the anxiety that, that transition can cause. And then finally, after several years in the field, pay it forward and become a mentor yourself. Put yourself out there. Work with people who were in the situation that you were in, or that we're all in, as that transition starts happening. So those 2 comments.
Okay, so don't be a Morty, but don't be a Rick either. So somewhere in between those 2 things, right? So thanks, everyone. Our guest today was Lennie Simon from Springboard. Thank you, Lennie, so much for joining us. We'll have you back because there's a lot to unpack in this realm. Thanks, Russ.
Thanks, Lennie.
And we'll see you next time on Secure Digital Life.